Imaginez une guitare acoustique dont le son et la jouabilité repoussent toutes les limites, comme si chaque accord vous emmenait vers de nouveaux horizons musicaux. Bienvenue dans l'univers révolutionnaire des guitares Taylor, où l'innovation et la passion pour la musique se rencontrent harmonieusement. Aujourd'hui, nous plongeons au cœur de cette marque iconique de l'industrie musicale, réputée pour ses innovations et son dévouement envers l'art de la lutte. Fondée en 1974 par les esprits visionnaires Bob Taylor et Kurt Listug, cette entreprise californienne a rapidement conquis le cœur des musiciens du monde entier grâce à ses instruments exceptionnels. Taylor a récemment ouvert ses portes à Stars Music et nous avons eu la chance de pouvoir rencontrer des personnes passionnées qui donnent vie à ces instruments. Dans cette vidéo, nous allons voir comment Taylor réinvente la guitare acoustique chaque jour et découvrir comment leurs innovations ont révolutionné l'expérience musicale.
I look at guitars and think the best guitar is the one I'm going to build tomorrow. It's never done. Every time you go to make something, it's going to teach you 10 other things that are worth exploring.
Depuis ses débuts, Taylor a toujours eu pour objectif de repousser les limites de la guitare acoustique. Ils n'ont jamais cessé de remettre en question les méthodes traditionnelles de lutherie, comme par exemple le manche qu'ils ont choisi de visser au corps plutôt que de le coller. Ils font face au défi de faire comprendre au monde que les nouvelles voies qu'ils empruntent sont généralement plus bénéfiques que les méthodes traditionnelles. Et oui, ce n'est pas toujours facile de bousculer les conventions établies, mais cette vision novatrice a été le catalyseur de nombreuses avancées uniques à Taylor, des avancées qui ont su faire la différence.
Taylor has always been the company that thought differently and did things differently. If you go back to the struggle that it was to introduce a bolt-on heel, a bolt-on neck to an acoustic guitar, we had a real hard time for that years ago, and we had to fight that uphill battle all the way. And we just never were that conventional thinker where let's just follow the path and do something that's tried and true and everybody's always done. We're always trying to think of a different way to do it, all the way from that bolt-on neck to the NT way of doing the neck, having a bolt-on neck, even the bracing, the full-on bracing pattern going from an X brace to a V brace.
We were founded in 1974. We had no legacy, you know, we had no following. So Bob Taylor was free to innovate, and we have always innovated at Taylor, and fast forward almost 50 years now, and we have a reputation for innovation, so our customers expect it.
S'ils sont réputés et attendus pour leurs innovations, cela ne vient pas sans un grand travail. D'une simple idée venue de divers horizons à l'aboutissement d'une avancée technologique, tout ce processus représente un véritable défi. C'est le fruit d'une réflexion méticuleuse, de recherche approfondie, des tests rigoureux et de perfectionnement constant. Ils ne relâchent jamais leurs efforts tant qu'ils n'ont pas atteint le niveau d'excellence qu'ils visent.
Some days when you might set out to solve a problem and your solution sparks new ability, or it sparks a new path forward. Other times you go out and you're the recipient of some fresh inspiration. You end up with this creative thing that doesn't even have a context for it, except that you feel compelled to make it and figure out the details later. And so it comes in a variety of forms based on the day and what you're working on. Oddly enough, it seems like some of the best ideas come at the worst possible time. You're working on some problem, and you know you've got to fix this, this, and this. Maybe this tool is failing. You need a new method for this. And then out of left field, this thing comes out. You go, I can't look away. For us, innovation is not something we set out to achieve. It's something that happens in the process of going about our work.
How do we keep reinventing the acoustic guitar at Taylor? It's Andy Powers. Here's how I compare what we do to other companies. We all have our favorite recipe. When you got your favorite recipe, you probably tried somebody else's, then you added your own spices to make it taste like you want it to taste. And that's what we do at Taylor. We've taken that recipe, that 180-year-old recipe, and made it with our flavor. With V-class bracing though, well, that's a whole new recipe. So that was a big change. But at its core, this is still an acoustic guitar. It still has to project in a certain way. It still needs to have a certain tone. It still needs to play in a certain way. So yes, it's another variation of that recipe. Every year, we may find a new spice that we add to our recipe. So that's how we do it every year, is we constantly are innovating. We're constantly working towards improving the player experience and improving the tonal experience of acoustic guitar.
We like to write our own story. We're going to create things that are different, and when we see something that works better than what we've done before, we're going to be quick to adopt it. The V-class bracing architecture was one such design. By quick, I meant it still took years to work through, but that was an idea that when it came to me, I knew right away this was a good thing for us, for the way that we wanted to build guitars, and a good thing for musicians, because you could have an instrument that was more dynamic, more stable, more accurate. There was a level of precision that could give our guitars that I hadn't heard before. It could start traveling into different styles of guitars, all these different woods that we've been working with. It opened up a lot of doors for us. It is more reflective of the materials that it's made of, and so even just that fact allowed us a wider variety of sounds than we'd ever accessed before. For the smaller grand theater guitar, the GT, that was an interesting design for us, and it led to the development of the C-class bracing. It was actually something I had sort of played with for a little while as I was developing V-class, as an asymmetrical variation of the same basic idea. What it allowed me to do was take an asymmetrical design and create an asymmetrical tonal response out of the guitar. So for something that's a relatively small body guitar, relatively low string tension, slightly smaller scale length, it was a way to accentuate certain parts of the guitar's response in a way that I would have had a hard time achieving with a V-class. So I get a lot of the benefits came from the same basic idea, but now adapted towards creating a different tonal response.
Avec les différentes essences de bois utilisées et la forme de la caisse, le barrage fait partie des fondations sonores d'une guitare acoustique. En complément de cela, il existe une multitude de paramètres que l'on peut manipuler pour faire évoluer une guitare, tant au niveau sonore que sur le confort de jeu. La série Builders Edition, créée par Andy Power, est un concentré de tous ces paramètres poussés au maximum. Ce sont des guitares avant-gardistes qui montrent toute l'expertise de Taylor en termes d'innovation.
A Builders Edition guitar is a guitar that Andy Powers would like to play himself. So it has all the player comforts that any player would appreciate while playing a guitar. It has a beveled armrest, contour cutaway, chamfered edges, which means they're rolled off, very smooth all around the guitar, including the neck.
As Taylor guitars, we have a pretty easy to understand framework of models. You know, different layers of ornamentation, different woods that are associated with different series. I wanted to create a guitar, starting with the K14, that didn't actually fall within this nicely structured framework. And over here, I created this thing that wasn't like those at all. And so I wanted to make it. Well, I'm not going to let labels determine what it is we make as guitar makers. We can change the rules. We can change a different label. We can make something totally new. And so that became kind of like a space for me to experiment with more cutting-edge guitar-making ideas. You'd see, different edge treatments, this more complicated woodworking. You saw things like the 816 with the twin sound holes, and some ideas that I've been working with that don't fit well within the regular world of acoustic guitars.
Au-delà des importantes avancées faites par Taylor sur la conception de leur guitare acoustique, c'est le système de pré-amplification ES2 qui a révolutionné le monde de l'électroacoustique ces dernières années. Depuis des décennies, les capteurs piezo sont positionnés sous le sillet en se basant sur le fait que les vibrations des cordes et de la table font rebondir le sillet de haut en bas. Cependant, le mouvement vertical est restreint par la tension des cordes vers le bas. Le mouvement naturel du sillet lorsqu'une guitare est jouée est en réalité d'avant en arrière, comme un pendule. C'est cette découverte qui a conduit l'équipe de conception de Taylor à repositionner les cristaux derrière le sillet. Ce nouvel emplacement permet au capteur de réagir de manière plus naturelle à l'énergie de la guitare à travers le sillet. Et pour encore plus de finesse, le système ES2 est composé de 3 capteurs piezo différents calibrés individuellement. C'est une innovation qui a demandé beaucoup d'années de travail et de recherche à Taylor avant d'arriver à un tel résultat.
When we first started talking about it, was around 1999, 2000, and started working on it, we were trying to come up with a way to make a guitar sound a little bit more acoustic amplified than the standard, a lot of what the typical things were out there, the piezo. We were trying to get a little warmer, richer, deeper sound out of it. And there was there was a lot of R&D before we could even make our first move. So many different aspects because we had to learn a lot about acoustic amplification to be able to design something. And then we had our ES1, our ES 1.2, 1.3. It morphed because we just kept learning and finding better ways and actually more simpler ways to do the same thing, to get an acoustic guitar to sound a little bit more real when it was amplified. And all the way to the current ES2, started out with the ES1 and it had all these different sensors in the body, and we basically took it all the way to the point where we simplified it to just these piezo elements behind the saddle that it is today, and it just made it easier to work with, easier to troubleshoot, easier to amplify. We never stop on that journey. We were constantly trying to think of better ways to amplify guitars. Even right now we're working on some things that we feel really good about that could be even better than that in the near future.
Si Taylor propose tous leurs modèles en version électroacoustique, il y a une innovation présente uniquement sur les formats grand symphonie, le pan coupé Soundport. Il s'agit d'une découpe florentine partielle qui laisse l'arrière de la guitare intacte, avec une rosace elliptique supplémentaire sculptée dans le pan coupé. Elle offre une projection haute fidélité ainsi qu'un accès aux frettes supérieures plus facile. Une nouvelle fois un choix audacieux de la part de Andy Power, là où la plupart des autres fabricants placent la seconde rosace vers le guitariste.
We use twin Soundport design on our Grand Symphony model, but a lot of folks have asked me, why don't you use a Soundport on the side? And I don't often like the way that it works. Some designs it works pretty well, but for the way we build a guitar, it's not a great fit. The Grand Symphony was different because it was a very specific way to set air in motion in a unique pattern by using a deliberate offset between the two apertures. One is elliptical, one is circular. There's some interesting things that happen there. Largely, we like to build guitars that fall in the range that most musicians could use and appreciate. Our job as a guitar maker is to give musicians something that they enjoy and find inspiration in. We want them to be using it and they want to use it and go apply their trade. And so when we get feedback from musicians about something that's working well, we know to do more of it. Sometimes it's something that isn't working for one particular musician or something that's not working on their stage or whatnot. So we work very closely with musicians to find out what context and what kind of sounds are you creating, because for us there's always opportunity in that.
En mettant l'innovation au cœur de leur démarche, Taylor crée des guitares qui touchent l'âme des musiciens du monde entier, car pour eux, l'innovation et la musique sont indissociables. Ils savent que chaque détail compte, que chaque innovation peut faire la différence, et c'est cet esprit visionnaire qui les pousse à créer des instruments toujours plus performants. Leur mission est claire, permettre aux guitaristes de se concentrer pleinement sur la musique et de se laisser porter par l'instrument.
We're trying to constantly keep the tone of the guitar better and better and better, and Taylor has a certain tone that it's known for. But when it comes to the experience itself, we just want the guitar just like 35 years ago or 40 years ago. We want it to feel good in your hands. We want the neck to feel good and sleek. We want the action to be nice. We want it to be an experience where it's inspiring you and it's not taking away. In other words, some guitars, people pick them up and they feel like they're fighting it. We're the opposite of that, and that goes back to Bob's original thing. We want people to pick it up and just go, wow, this thing feels so good and plays so good. Now you can just focus on the music, focus on your songwriting, and not think so much about the battle you might have to be doing to play the guitar. So that experience is just the way it always was, for it to get in somebody's hands and them to just fall in love with it, the feel, the playability, and let the music come from there.
C'est en effet tout ce que l'on souhaite en tant que guitariste. Ne pas se poser de questions, s'exprimer avec notre instrument et simplement jouer de la musique. Et avec des guitares Taylor aussi évoluées, on peut se demander quels sont leurs projets pour les années à venir. Andy Power nous explique que chez Taylor, l'envie d'innover ne faiblit jamais.
Our plans for the future are always in a state of development. You know what you might be working on tomorrow. You know what you'll be working on next week. But in 10 years' time, that picture isn't quite so clear. We don't really know what's going to happen next. We don't know what'll happen in a couple of years. Ask me what I thought was going to happen in January of 2020, and I would have told you something very different than what reality was. But one thing I do know is that we're in the business of making great instruments to put into the hands of musicians. And we want to do that with more creativity and better materials at a higher level than we've ever done. That's the part that we're committed to because we love the work that we do and we love that people are playing music. So in the future, that's what I see. I see more of that.
Avec cette vision générale, nous comprenons que Taylor est une marque jeune qui n'a rien à prouver. Le Soundport ou encore le Barrage en V montrent qu'ils ont choisi de tracer leur propre chemin en repoussant les limites de la lutherie et en créant une nouvelle voie pour l'industrie de la guitare acoustique. Chaque décision, chaque innovation est guidée par une ambition commune, libérer la créativité des guitaristes et repousser les frontières musicales. La marque continue de réinventer la guitare chaque jour en conjuguant ingénieusement tradition et modernité. Leur innovation révolutionnaire et leurs esprits visionnaires ont changé les attentes de l'univers de la guitare, élevant la qualité sonore, le confort de jeu et l'expérience musicale pour tous les passionnés.